On the evening of June 1, 2025, a date that would forever be etched in the memory of Boulder, Colorado's Jewish community gathered, a diverse tapestry of individuals, families, and friends, to honor the Israeli hostages who were taken by Hamas in October 2023. The pain of their absence was palpable, a shared burden carried by all who attended. The event, carefully planned and deeply meaningful, was held on the eve of Shavuot, a time of reflection and renewal in the Jewish tradition. It was meant to be a peaceful gathering, a moment for quiet contemplation and collective support, a moment of solidarity and remembrance, a chance to stand together against the forces of hatred and division. Families and friends came together, seeking solace in each other's presence, united by hope, by the unwavering belief in a future free from violence and fear, and a desire to stand against terror, to show the world that even in the face of unimaginable cruelty, the human spirit can endure. But the calm was shattered, the peace irrevocably broken, by an act of violence so sudden and unexpected that it left everyone reeling in disbelief. That would leave the community reeling, struggling to comprehend the senselessness of it all. The choice of Boulder, a city known for its progressive values, its commitment to inclusivity and social justice, made the attack even more shocking, a stark reminder that hatred can strike anywhere, at any time. Despite precautions, security measures that had been carefully considered and implemented, no one could have anticipated the brutality that would unfold, the sheer malice that fueled the attack. The gathering's purpose, its very reason for being, to highlight victims of violence, to remember their stories and honor their lives, became tragically ironic, a cruel twist of fate that no one could have foreseen. As attendees themselves became targets, their vulnerability exposed in the most horrific way imaginable. This was not a political rally, not a demonstration of power or ideology, but a humanitarian call for compassion, a plea for understanding and empathy in a world too often consumed by hatred. The sudden eruption of violence, like a storm breaking without warning, turned an evening of remembrance, a time for healing and connection, into one of trauma and fear, a nightmare that would linger long after the sirens faded and the news cameras departed, leaving a community in shock, grappling with the aftermath of an unspeakable tragedy. The tranquility of the Boulder gathering was shattered by a sudden, violent assault. Reports say attackers hurled Molotov cocktails into the crowd, instantly turning the peaceful event into chaos. The air filled with smoke and flames as people scrambled for safety. A flamethrower was also allegedly used, escalating the terror and causing severe burns. Eyewitnesses described pandemonium as attendees tried to escape and help the injured. The attack was swift and brutal, clearly intended to inflict maximum harm and fear. The use of fire as a weapon was a chilling choice, meant to leave lasting scars, both physical and psychological. First responders rushed in, battling flames and tending to the wounded. The sense of violation was immense. A space for peace had been desecrated. Those who came to stand against terror became its direct victims, underscoring the dangers faced by vulnerable communities. The attack, a sudden eruption of violence, left a dozen people injured, their lives irrevocably altered in an instant. The scene was one of chaos and pain, a stark reminder of the fragility of peace. Among the injured were two elderly victims who suffered severe burns, their vulnerability making the attack all the more heinous. They required immediate and intensive medical care. But the scars of this event ran deeper than the physical wounds. The emotional trauma extended far beyond the immediate victims, leaving an invisible mark on countless lives. The attack sent shockwaves through the entire Jewish community, shattering their sense of safety and security. It was an assault on their faith, their heritage, and their very identity. Law enforcement acted swiftly, and within hours they had arrested Mohammed Sabri Solomon, the man they believed was responsible for the horrific act. Solomon, a 45-year-old Egyptian national, had been residing in Colorado Springs, seemingly blending into the fabric of the community. During interrogation, Solomon reportedly confessed to the crime, stating that he wanted to kill all Zionist people, revealing a chilling motive behind his actions. His confession exposed the virulent anti-Semitic hatred that fueled the attack, transforming it from a random act of violence into a deliberate hate crime. As the investigation deepened, investigators discovered that Solomon was in the U.S. illegally, a fact that further complicated the already complex case. He had overstayed his visa, remaining in the country long after his legal authorization had expired. This revelation added a new layer of controversy to the case, sparking debate about immigration policies and border security. But despite the added complexities, the primary focus remained on the hate-fueled violence and the devastating impact it had on the victims and the community. Solomon now faces a multitude of serious charges, including attempted murder, which carries a significant prison sentence. He is also charged with assault and federal hate crimes, reflecting the severity of his actions and the deep-seated prejudice that motivated them. His calculated use of explosives and the deliberate targeting of elderly individuals further underscored the brutality and the premeditated nature of the crime, leaving no doubt about the malicious intent behind it. In the aftermath of his arrest, Solomon's wife and 5 children were also detained by immigration officials, a consequence of his illegal status in the country. They now face expedited removal proceedings, potentially leading to their deportation and separation from their home and community. The consequences of Solomon's actions rippled outward, touching not only the direct victims but also extending to his own family and the wider community. The tragedy serves as a stark reminder that violence and hatred have far-reaching effects, impacting not only the intended targets but also the families and loved ones of the perpetrators. Solomon is currently being held on a staggering $10 million bail, a reflection of the severity of the charges against him and the potential risk he poses to the community. This high bail underscores the gravity of his alleged crimes and the commitment of the justice system to holding him accountable for his actions. The community is now left grappling with the profound aftermath of this senseless act of violence, struggling to make sense of what happened and how to move forward. They are searching for answers, seeking solace in one another, and embarking on a long and difficult journey toward healing and reconciliation. News of the Boulder attack spread quickly, prompting responses from political leaders nationwide. Representative Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez, or AOC, posted on X, expressing horror and sympathy for the victims. She wrote, "My heart is with the victims and our Jewish communities across the country." AOC acknowledged the rise in antisemitism and called for a collective effort to confront it. Her statement condemned the violence and offered solidarity, but reactions were mixed. Some welcomed her words, seeing them as necessary support for a grieving community. Others questioned whether statements alone were enough, especially from influential leaders. The conversation quickly shifted from expressions of horror to demands for real action against hate. The conversation took a turn when former MLB All-Star Kevin Youkilis, who is Jewish, publicly challenged AOC's response. On X, Youkilis accused her of virtue signaling, arguing that repeated statements after attacks do little to address the root problem. He asked, "What have you done to confront those calling for intifadas in NYC?" A direct challenge referencing calls for violence in her district. Youkilis demanded a concrete plan of action, not just words. His status as a respected athlete and member of the Jewish community gave his critique weight. He voiced a frustration shared by many, that political statements are empty without real follow-through. The exchange highlighted a growing divide between public condemnations and the demand for tangible solutions. For Youkilis and others, the cycle of attack and statement is no longer enough. Youkilis' criticism went beyond a single post. It was a call for genuine leadership. He argued that politicians often avoid confronting radical elements out of political fear, leading to a cycle of condemnation without consequence. Youkilis specifically challenged AOC to address anti-Semitism in her own district, citing calls for violence at protests and on campuses. He insisted that true leadership means standing up to hate, even when it's politically inconvenient. Sympathy after the fact, he said, is not enough. Proactive measures are needed to prevent attacks. For Youkilis, the disconnect between words and action is a source of deep disappointment and fear. He called for robust, tangible efforts from leaders to protect Jewish communities and combat rising antisemitism. The Boulder attack is part of a disturbing surge in antisemitism across the U.S., especially since the October 2023 Hamas attack on Israel. Jewish communities report more harassment, threats, and violence, creating a climate of fear. The Anti-Defamation League recorded over 9,300 anti-Semitic incidents in 2024, a 344% increase in 5 years. Many of these attacks are linked to Israel or Zionism, showing how global events fuel domestic hate. Less than 2 weeks before Boulder, 2 Israeli embassy workers were fatally shot in Washington, D.C. Politicians, including AOC, condemned that attack as well, but critics like Youkilis see a pattern of words without action. Jewish institutions now require heightened security, and anti-Semitic rhetoric is increasingly normalized in public discourse. The urgent call for real action grows louder as communities feel more vulnerable than ever. The Boulder shooting sparked immediate and widespread condemnation. AOC was not alone in condemning the Boulder attack. Leaders nationwide voiced outrage and support for the Jewish community, echoing a sentiment of unity against hate. This wasn't just a local issue, it resonated across the country, prompting calls for national reflection and action. Members of the squad, including Rashida Tlaib and Ilhan Omar, issued statements rejecting violence and hatred, emphasizing the need for inclusivity and understanding in the face of such tragedies. Their words carried significant weight, representing a powerful stance against all forms of bigotry. Colorado Governor Jared Polis called the attack a vicious act of terrorism and pledged unwavering support to the state's Jewish community, promising resources and solidarity during a time of immense grief and fear. Representative Joe Neguse, who represents Boulder, called for more than words, demanding increased action to stop anti-Semitic violence, urging lawmakers to translate their condolences into concrete legislative measures. These statements reflected a broad consensus against hate, but also highlighted the challenge of turning words into effective policy. The question remained, how could these expressions of solidarity be transformed into tangible change? Critics argue that public condemnations must be matched by real strategies to prevent attacks and dismantle hateful ideologies. They emphasized that symbolic gestures alone were insufficient to address the root causes of such violence. The demand for concrete steps to ensure safety and accountability is growing, with communities actively seeking solutions to protect themselves and prevent future tragedies. As incidents of hate persist, affected communities look for more than just expressions of solidarity. They seek tangible actions that demonstrate a genuine commitment to their safety and well-being. The nation faces a critical test. Will leaders move beyond statements to real solutions, or will these expressions of concern remain just words in the face of escalating hate? The Boulder attack and ensuing debate raise a crucial question. What does real action against anti-Semitism look like? Many argue that statements of solidarity are not enough. Tangible, proactive measures are needed. Real action could mean increased security funding for Jewish institutions, robust educational programs, and better law enforcement training to address hate crimes. Leaders must also confront anti-Semitic rhetoric within their own circles, even when it's politically risky. Combating hate requires courage and collaboration, and a willingness to challenge normalization of anti-Semitism in all spaces. The call for decisive, sustained action is louder than ever. The future depends on whether leaders are willing to take the necessary steps to ensure safety and justice for all.